This is E.T., and this is William Muldoon. For several years in the 1890s, Muldoon was world's wrestling champion, never defeated, and among the world's strongest men. And he was recognized worldwide as the foremost trainer of athletes. That was after he put a very dissipated, drunk, way overweight John L. Sullivan in shape for the last bare knuckles fight under the London prize rules. Now, E.T. is going to later upload video about Muldoon's training methods. But this one has to do with his involvement with a fight that never took place, but a fight with an outcome that is debated today. We have to go back to the early 1920s. Jack Dempsey is heavyweight champion of the world. He dismantled Jess Willard on July 4 of 1919 in Toledo, Ohio. But by 1922, his reputation is not so great because there are allegations that he'd beat up his former wife, charges that he'd avoided the draft during World War I. And then there was his manager, Doc Kearns. Kearns faced allegations, probably true, that more recently faced the now dead Jeffrey Epstein. Dempsey, since 1919, had only fought 3 times: Billy Miskey, Bill Brennan, George Carpentier, and Dempsey appeared to be not in the best of condition. So an obvious solution to these problems, and also money problems, would be a competitive fight with the number 1 ranked challenger, who in 1922 happened to be Harry Wills, and he was ranked number 1. He had a pretty good record during the past few years, including a KO victory over an aging Gunboat Smith. And I think he had 16 at least fights with Sam Langford. Well, Will seems an obvious good choice, considering that Dempsey already beat the other ranked fighters, including Fred Fulton, whom Dempsey knocked out in the first round. Dempsey and his manager Kearns were willing, I want to emphasize, were willing to fight Harry Wills, and Dempsey even signed a contract to do just that. It guaranteed Dempsey $27,000. After he signed, he left New York to appear in a play. But there are problems. Most states had prohibited pro boxing, and several influential national organizations were pushing to ban it nationwide. This, by the way, is why Dempsey had to fight Willard in faraway Toledo, Ohio. New York, however, had recently and reluctantly given the okay for pro bouts in that state. But another problem was this: race riots. They were a problem in the early 20th century in the U.S., and many had nothing to do with boxing. For instance, you might want to look up Tulsa, Oklahoma riots. And many of the riots that did accompany boxing were intra-racial. For instance, Jewish versus WASP versus Irish versus Polish versus Italian, and so on. But the riots were larger and more violent if the fight was between black and white. Consider what happened after the Jack Johnson-James J. Jeffries affair. With mounting pressure from anti-boxing forces versus the fans who wanted to see Dempsey take on Wills, somebody with authority in New York had to make a final decision. And this is where we rejoin William Muldoon, world famous, as I mentioned, and a reputation for unquestioned integrity. William Muldoon's reputation was so high that President Teddy Roosevelt considered him for a cabinet position. New York's governor appointed Muldoon to head up a new state athletic commission. So everybody looked to Muldoon for the final judgment for the Dempsey-Wills fight. It seems in hindsight that Muldoon had no reason to stop the encounter. Dempsey had signed the contract to meet Wills. The pro-boxing forces, including World War I's General Pershing, were gaining leverage And also boxing was gaining some legitimacy thanks to a new publication called Ring Magazine, Nat Fleischer editor. They had, the magazine and Fleischer, given the sport more legitimacy. But here's what Muldoon did. He publicly condemned, and I'm quoting Muldoon, the money-mad people in boxing who have simply gone crazy, unquote. He then went on to denounce fighters who make more money than the U.S. president. Then he decreed that any fight, be it Dempsey-Wills or Dempsey-Willard, another fight that was being talked about, that any bout staged in New York must be staged under his rules, including the following. At least 40,000 tickets must be offered at no more than $2 apiece, and ringside seats must be under 15. This, as all familiar with professional boxing knew, would be unacceptable to Doc Kearns and the promoter, Tex Rickard. But Dempsey, needing a payday, was upset. He told the New York Tribune that the fight, the way things are going, isn't going to happen until 1982. Doc Kearns, who himself was not sure about the wisdom of putting his man in with Wills, but who also needed a payday, was not sure just what Muldoon would do next. Is he going to force a Dempsey-Wills fight that's not going to make money for anybody? Is he going to wait and do nothing? And then the question comes up, does Muldoon have actual power to force, sanction, prohibit a fight? Well, as things turned out, Muldoon did nothing more. But Dempsey never did meet Wills in the ring because Doc Kearns found another fight. This one was in faraway Shelby, Montana. And it was against a good, somewhat obscure heavyweight named Tommy Gibbons. And this story of the encounter with Gibbons is a huge and very interesting story for another video. Now, questions remain. Could the 6-foot, 180-pound, somewhat out of shape Jack Dempsey return to the condition he had in 1919 when he took the title and handle Wills, who stood 6 feet 4 inches and weighed 220 pounds? Were racially minded forces pressuring Muldoon to stop a Dempsey-Wills fight? Well, neither question can be answered to the satisfaction of everyone, but relatively recent Dempsey biographers have noted that people close to Muldoon report that he was pressured, and he was pressured for racial reasons, to find some reason that weren't too obvious that he could use to block the fight. As for who would win the fight, Dempsey versus Wills, E.T. is leaving that up to those more informed than he. Maybe that's you. Type in your thoughts in the comment section below, and do share this video and others on social media. Thank you.